The Trump coalition, or MAGA, doesn't really agree on a whole lot except for Trump himself. You have evangelicals, libertarians, conservatives, nationalists, working class voters, as well as anti-establishment independents, people with wide and varied worldviews that oftentimes disagreed, and yet they're all part of the same political movement. The first cracks are beginning to show in that coalition, with the war in Iran and rising gas prices and economic pressures that aren't letting up for everyday Americans. For those of us outside the coalition, the contradictions have seemed obvious for years. So my question is, how has this illusion held for so long? How did a rich kid from Queens, New York become the face of right-wing populism? And how did a billionaire playboy who was a Democrat most of his life become the face of modern conservatism? And how has a coalition of people who disagree on so much held together for so long? This is the Silent Republic. I think before anything else, we have to talk about the man, Donald Trump. He's been around for decades, and he was a brand in the public eye long before he stepped into politics. Through constant reinvention and exposure, he has remained relevant despite multiple business failings, sex scandals, nasty divorces, friendships with notorious pedophiles, countless allegations of, and being found liable for sexual assault himself. And this is just my opinion, but I don't think Trump actually believes in much of anything except maybe win at all costs. And by win, I mean say that you're winning. Never admit defeat and always claim victory. I think that's his foundational principle. And because Trump is so completely unprincipled, he has said contradictory things over the years. His positions have changed, motivated by donor priorities or personal investments. And what this does is it kind of gives people a blank slate. A loud, uncouth, gold-wearing blank slate. And what happens is each portion of this coalition just sort of projects their goals and their ambitions onto him. And then he'll say things to sort of like validate those projections at times. Again, I don't think he actually believes much of anything, but that doesn't actually matter. For evangelicals, they often see Trump as the imperfect tool of God. So like King Saul in the Old Testament, or even the prophet Balaam from Moab, Trump has been selected by God to bring about God's will. And that's their framework. So it doesn't matter that this very same Christian coalition who back in the 1990s were foaming at the mouth over the Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton scandal are now willing to just completely overlook the man who has cheated on every single one of his wives, assaulted multiple women, and had a relationship with a known pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, for decades. That doesn't matter. What matters is a myth that has built within this group's mind and has been preached from pulpits and validated by evangelical leaders. Trump is God's guy, and God is using him to accomplish his will. That's the line, and that's what matters. So there are no lengths that he can't go to, no blasphemy that they can't overlook, no amount of Middle Eastern children slaughtered that they can't turn a blind eye to, because none of it can overcome a truly religious conviction. And this is one of the dangers of religion, is that it takes otherwise like normal and decent people and turns them into something else, turns them into people that believe and co-sign and say just heinous, vile, disgusting things. So while I'm genuinely sad to see the continued and ongoing evangelical support for Trump, I'm honestly not surprised. For conservatives, I genuinely don't know. Like, I'm not going to try to make the case for or justify how, like, the small government crowd ever supported this man and, like, continues to support this man by and large. It makes no sense to me. He is the antithesis of small government, from the expansion of ICE that tramples on the rights of American citizens and legal immigrants, as well as undocumented immigrants alike, to the weaponization of National Guards within various U.S. cities, to the expansion of military power on the world stage, and the constant threats to friends and allies alike. And I honestly don't get it. I can only come to the conclusion that there's a large number of people that say they're conservative, but they're just deeply unserious people. The kind of people that have no true guiding principles for their life or politics, and as long as there's an R by the name when it comes to voting, that's good enough for them. To be fair, principled conservatives do exist. They really do, just not within MAGA anymore. Anyone who claims to be conservative and still supports Trump is just lying to them at this point. They've been watching Newsmax and Fox News for far too long, and it's eroded their ability to think, and they live in a constant echo chamber that validates their every thought. I wouldn't have said that back in 2016 when politically Trump was still kind of an unknown, and I wouldn't have even said that back in 2020, right? But in 2026, really? After seeing everything we've seen, like if you are supposedly conservative and you still support this guy, I just can't take you seriously anymore. This is my least charitable take, and I acknowledge that. And if you disagree, feel free to respond in the comments, okay? But that's just where I'm at with them. I just can't do it with this crowd anymore. For nationalists, it makes sense that they largely support Donald Trump. It's a far-right political ideology that is adjacent to fascism, though not every single version of nationalism is quite so extreme. To me, it just makes complete sense that nationalists have stuck by Trump for so long. From the rhetoric against brown immigrants to the constant projection of America's power and might to the world. I mean, all of these things are just basically what nationalist wet dreams are made of. Where they are starting to break with Trump is his constant and unwavering support for and acquiescence to Israel. While many within the nationalist coalition might break with him because of underlying anti-Semitism, there are some, I guess, principled nationalists that for them, the focus on any other state or nation besides the U.S. is a true issue. And so this is like the American first crowd. And the bottom line is Trump's second term has been anything but. Now, libertarians are an interesting one because I think for them, it was a lesser of two evils scenario. Oftentimes, libertarianism is right-wing coded, especially within the U.S., and though it's its own distinct political ideology, and there are left libertarians, such as myself, that's just not where a lot of American libertarians are at. So for many of those right-leaning libertarians, the excesses that the left took during the 2010s was just too much, right? The cancel culture stuff, the kind of woke mob idea, some of the lobbying against free speech, those kind of things that just drove them further to the right and right into Trump's arms. They heard the promise from Trump of no new wars and America keeping to itself and focusing on building a strong economy, and that just simply appealed to a lot of them. And for many, they may have been like uneasy about Trump himself, but when it came down to Kamala or Trump, for them, they had to go with the lesser of two evils within their framework. And I think now most of them, and this is like encapsulated in people like Dave Smith, now see how wrong they were. They miscalculated this horribly. And that's because Trump is a liar. Like, we all know that. But people were genuinely swindled by him again. He's not America first. He's never been anything but himself first. And we've had to learn that the hard way multiple times. And I already know that I'm going to have people angry about how charitable I'm being with libertarians right now, with how kind of scathing I was for conservatives earlier. And what I have to say is that the difference for me is that the libertarian coalition behind Trump has pretty much fizzled out since his election, and what we've witnessed from 2025 into now 2026, right? It's just kind of fizzled out. But the conservatives, by and large, are still backing Trump. And for me, it's one thing to get fooled and realize you fucked up and then, you know, turn around and be like, man, I fucked up, right? Whereas the conservatives just tend to like double down. And for me, that's just kind of unforgivable. It's like, admit when you're wrong, you fucked up, move on with life. And they just refuse to do that. So I have nothing for them. Then you have your sort of blue collar working class type. And the bottom line is these people aren't terribly political. They don't really follow news cycles, and they tend to vote more based on vibes. And then you get a guy like Trump who knows how to speak the populist language and who promises to drain the swamp, even though he's a swamp creature himself, who promises to fix the economy and make life affordable again. And so for this group of people that isn't engaged very much, right, and they just hear this rhetoric, that's really compelling to them. And so the line kind of is for this group that Trump's a businessman. And somehow Trump being a businessman translates to him being good at running the state or the nation and doing that well economically. And so for many, it was enough. They were sold. And I get it. I really do. This group is the one I have the most sympathy for. For those who don't really follow politics and got drawn in by the con and wanted relief from the vice grip of late stage capitalism. So sadly, they turned to the loudest voice in the room who promised them the moon and then promptly turned around and threw them the bird and told them to go fuck themselves. The working class always eats shit while the billionaires and CEOs get their tax cuts. I just wish more people had seen it before they elected this billionaire yet again. Never forget this, the billionaires have better class solidarity than the rest of us, and it doesn't matter what letters beside their name, because the bottom line is capital always watches out for capital first. I don't really believe much in absolute truth, but if there is absolute truth, this is one of them. And then lastly, we have the anti-establishment independents, right? And then adjacent to them and kind of overlapping, you have the conspiracy theorist crowd. And Trump spoke their language too. You know, he talked about draining that swamp. He also positioned himself like as a shield for these people, validating them. You know, he said things like the left or the Dems in general, they're after me, but they're not really after me. They're only after me because I stand between them and you, right? That was the line, and that resonated with this group of people. Trump has floated and endorsed countless conspiracy theories over the years, and there's nothing that a conspiracy theorist loves more than validation from an authority figure. The QAnon types and all the breeds of conspiracy theorists that go along with it were here for it. And that leads to this sort of anti-establishment voting block of people who don't actually vote based on like policies or substance of any kind. They vote on vibes, and that vibe was that Trump is a wrecking ball who's going to bring the establishment crashing down. And they were right about the wrecking ball part, but what's crashing down is the last vestiges of our democratic institutions, and what's rising to take its place is oligarchy. And so I hope that you can see that Trump becomes any number of things based on the priorities of these various groups within MAGA. Each brings a different framework and different priorities, and they project that onto Trump, and then he'll validate each one. And it doesn't matter that they can't all be right, that it can't all be true, because that's not actually what's important. What's important is that people want to feel heard. They want to be validated and feel like someone is fighting for them and on their side. And if they feel validated, oftentimes they'll ignore a whole host of other issues. And people like Donald Trump intuitively know that. And they abuse that knowledge in a very predatory way, like intentionally. This is not an accident. It's not a bug. It is a feature of the way people like him operate. And I do have hope, though not a lot some days, when I see people like Candace Owens or even Tucker Carlson break with Trump. And I think they break with him for somewhat principled reasons sometimes, and other times because they kind of see the ship sinking and decide to hop off board before they sink with it, right? But at the end of the day, I'll take a win for what it is, right? I don't think that these people that are breaking with Trump are always good faith. But to see the coalition start to crack, for me, that's nothing but good news. I don't know where this will go, and I don't know how the story ends. But I know that one day we're going to have to look back on the last decade, and we're going to have to perform an autopsy. We will have to reckon with this time in history, as we do with every time. And so I would caution everyone, no matter your political position, try to live with that perspective, the historical one, because our lives and our society will be judged by the countless millions of people who come after us and inherit our world. And I want to be on the right side of history. This is the Silent Republic.